When performing the lateral lunge, I think this is the most this is an exercise that I have to cue my clients on quite a bit. Once it is good, it's pretty easy to maintain proper form. Once you feel the position out, you're set. But to get into the position and to feel the position can be really challenging for some. So I foresee this being a commonly clicked on cueing video. When setting up for the lateral lunge, the first thing is making sure that your feet are in a good position. You do not want to, especially if you got really long legs, be too close together with your feet because you're going to run out of real estate to lunge. You want your feet to be wide enough so that you can get in a good solid lateral lunge position and you're not wanting to rock onto the outside of your foot or drive your knee out to the side rather than over your toe, or drive your knee over your toe and feel like you have more to go and then rock onto the toe and lose contact with the heel. So whenever you're setting this position up, I always recommend start with a couple of body weight lateral lunges because that's going to give you an idea as to where you are and how everything feels. When you go into the lateral lunge, it's important to understand that there's still squat mechanics happening, which means you're going into a hinge position. That hip is driving backwards, the chest is coming forwards. All that's happening is I'm shifting to one side. And when I'm shifting to that one side, I also am not letting the knee drive out to the side. I'm shifting to the side because my weight is going to one side, but what's happening is my knee is still driving over my toe and my hip is still driving backwards. So just like in a traditional squat where knees driving over toe, my hips are going backwards, same with a lateral lunge. My knee is still driving over my toe and my hip is still moving backwards. It's still shifting backwards. And that is how to perform the lateral lunge. Oftentimes I see people too, when they set up for the lateral lunge, their toes are way out here. You don't want your toes to be out. You want your toes to be straight, facing the direction that you are facing. When you feel, oh, I'm in a good position, I feel like I have everything down in terms of width apart my feet are, then you're going to get into a position where you're ready to lunge. You can hold the weight contralateral, which means opposite, in the hand opposite to the leg that is bending, the leg that is going into the lunge. I think it is very important to make sure that the setup is good. Toes are straight, your feet are in a good position, I've got my weight in my hand, everything is set up properly so that you are in a good position to perform the movement properly. When you're ready to do the lateral lunge, you're going to drive the knee over the toe and simultaneously I'm driving my hip backwards. So I'm maintaining whole foot pressure the whole time. I'm not rocking into the toe. I'm not rocking into the outside of my foot. I am still keeping whole foot pressure in the ball of my foot, the outside of my foot, and my heel. Everything I'm still keeping pressure in. When you lunge too, another small cue is go ahead and hold the dumbbell neutral grip or the kettlebell, whatever you happen to be holding if you're holding a weight. It just helps get into position a little bit more efficiently. When you are doing the lateral lunge as well, you don't want the chest to collapse. The chest is merely coming down as a byproduct of the hip moving backwards so that center of mass stays over the foot, over that midfoot. If I'm just going backwards, right, what happens is I rock back into my heel, I lose that whole foot pressure. So my hip goes back, my knee goes over toe, and thus my chest comes down and drops as a result. Same with the other side, keeping whole foot pressure. My knee's going over my toe, my hip's going back. I'm maintaining whole foot pressure, and I'm coming back up. You can see it from the side as well. My toes are straight. I've got a good width between my feet. My hip goes back, my knees go over toe. My chest comes down, leans forward as a byproduct of my hip moving backwards. I'm keeping whole foot pressure. For people who have a really hard time with getting into that position, you can also set up a couple of wedges and have your foot positioned into the wedge. This will often put my clients in a really great position to not rock onto the outside of my foot. This is for people who tend to rock onto the outside of the foot. They really want to drive that knee out to the side. It's like, God, I keep wanting to get the knee out to the side, knee out to the side, knee out to the side. Set up a couple wedges, and you'll find that there is a greater emphasis of maintaining that whole foot pressure because you have a little bit more pressure on the inside of your foot, so that when you do move into that lunge, I have a little bit more help in terms of a cue to maintain whole foot pressure, maintain pressure on the inside of my foot as well as the outside of my foot. That is pretty much the lateral lunge. If you find that you're driving your knee really far out over the toe as well, it's important to let your hips sink back. That means that you're overemphasizing the knee over toe portion of the movement. You're really overemphasizing, okay, I got to drive my knee over the toe. And instead, I want you to think about going into a squat position, truly, where the knee is driving over the toe, but the hip is also moving back. My hip is also hinging. When you do this, don't focus so much on this opposite leg. This opposite leg is just hanging out. It's straight. I'm not trying to squat with that leg. It's just hanging out while this other foot moves into the proper lunge position.